Stand Up Retail family. It's Carrie and Edward here, and we're back with another episode curated just for you. Today, our topic of discussion will be on planning and creating structure to succeed. Are you excited, Carrie?
Yes, I am. I'm a big believer in structure, so I'm excited, and I have no idea what we're going to talk about or your topic, so I'm equally excited.
Well, you know, I'm sure you'll have a lot of input, to go into this topic. So I made it pretty simple and brief for us this time. So we're really only going to have two topics that we're going to cover today. But as some of the busiest days of the season starts to approach, I am sure you have all the planning and executed completed or in the process of wrapping up those action plans. If you remember, we discussed in an earlier episode the importance of a great action plan. So if you missed it, feel free to check in the description below. Oh, and remember, while you're down there, click on the subscribe button to receive notifications when we upload any of our materials curated by Carrie and myself with you in mind. Right, Carrie?
Yep. We need, if you find value in what we are giving you every single week, in order for us to be able to continue doing this, we really want to spread the joy and also spread the wealth of knowledge and sanity. So, suggesting it, subscribing, clicking that notification bell, so you know exactly when we're putting up different content. And we really are trying to make the content short, sweet, to the point, but really impactful, so you can take it to succeed this season, but at the same time use it all year round, so you get more enjoyment out of your employment. Oh, that rhymed.
Look at you. Look at you. You got the rhymes today. Come in with
I picked the wrong business to be in. I should have just made jingles.
Hey, we might work with something there. We can come up with a jingle for Stand Up Retail. I think that might work. So, with all that said, let's jump right into the discussion today. Planning and creating structure for success. So I want to take you through the two topics that we're going to cover today in this episode. So first, we're going to discuss the importance of a good organizational structure. And that could be mean a couple of things. So of course, you as a business, as an entity, a business needs to have a good organizational structure just in place in order for it to succeed. With that said, that also relates to you as an individual. So you as an individual, it's good that you have some type of good organizational structure, which, planning falls in. So it takes a lot of planning to set up a structure. And a lot of your places that you work for will probably already have, if that company or agency that you work for has a good structure set in place. Can I say this? There would be some type of brief description of what your role is in whatever aspect
the
you
structure
play in,
is. Yeah.
So there's
where you as an individual fall.
Exactly. Everyone has, their place of where they are needed. And this is important because this helps remove any obstacles, or it makes the process easy. It also helps with chaos.
Yeah.
And we all know that if there's no structure, there's chaos. So when you look at structuring, when you get into it, this also works for you as an individual, and it works for you that any placement you may have on a team. So you want to make sure that everyone in the team plays a role, and they know what their role is, and their role is clarified, and they all understand their role in this team. And then the other half is, I'm going to give you a little roadmap, and me and Carrie are going to talk through this roadmap. Very easy to remember. I tried to make it as easy as possible, and I like to call it the 4 W's. So we will talk about the 4 W's, which is basically the what, the why, the who, and the when. So let's jump right into these topics. What's the importance of a good organization and someone's structural foundation? So in many business entities, as we talked, it requires a structure to run efficiently. So the reason for that is that, like I said earlier, where there is no structure, there will be chaos. So if you think about that, think about your individual placement within that structure. Then take that and look at yourself as a small business within a business. Okay. The people that work under you are part of your organization and they're part of that structure.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to look at all those individuals and how do they fit in their structure. They will probably, if you're a manager and you have a team, a lot of them probably have the same structure, or they fall within the same structure. But then how do you take that structure and you look at their talents individually, and how does their talent work in that structure? Structure.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
And I hope this doesn't derail us too far. So I was thinking of myself, putting myself into the hourly category and trying to think of myself as where I fall as an hourly within that structure. And I think a lot of our hourly buddies out there really think that they fall so far down the structure that they're kind of, it's not that they're not important, because they know that the store or the company or the, the entity needs them to run. But when you are a manager or a supervisor and you are looking at your structure, should you be considering what each of those roles needs in order to support themselves within being able to do their specialty? Because I think every one of those different places, those different roles have different needs, right?
Right. And I'm glad you asked that. So when you get down to the hourly part, as I was saying earlier, you get down to what becomes like a mixture of everyone that kind of fits in the same or the same category. And within that, in order to be successful as an hourly, is that every individual has a specific talent. You, as a supervisor or a manager, if you are able to tap into that, that makes that foundation of that structure where it's a bigger group of individuals much stronger. So you, as an hourly, even though you fall in the same, the same job description as maybe 10 other people, but those 10 other people have individual talents that they're individually strong at within that category. And a good team, a good structured hourly team, is able to work amongst themselves within what they know, and what they don't know, they're able to get it from one of their peer colleagues that can share and help and filter in. And hopefully you, as a manager, have created the space where that's allowed. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, that speaks very deeply to empowerment.
Exactly.
I think a lot of the setup going into holiday requires everybody to kind of understand what their role is. And if they don't understand what their role is, and this goes back to some of the previous topics that we've talked about, without understanding that, having, the knowledge that you should ask those types of questions to understand what might be expected of you and how you are going to be able to leverage your strength to make that structure for success stronger, even stronger.
Yeah. So, which is, I'm glad you said that, because that takes us back to last week's learning where you talked about the communication.
Yeah.
And and the teachable moments and everything like that. So see how this all works together, people.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I mean, I think a lot of people outside of retail don't understand the back and forth between, every different role, but at the same time, there's a lot of skills and a lot of really important habits and behaviors that make for successful individuals on their own, but at the same time, building a successful individual.
Right.
If you approach your entire team or your entire location that way, depending on what your role is, you truly can build a rock solid structure that brings you success regardless of what time of year it is, or what season, or what holiday, or what sales setup you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Understanding your role within the structure is critical. And if you report to someone and you don't understand what is expected of you, or if you feel like you don't have clarity around what your role is, this is the time of year you need to get that clarity.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you are not going to feel very good coming in and not knowing what to expect. And so I think that is a pretty universal habit, as well as skill to have, is just personally going in and, like, I use the phrase showing up, but like if you show up knowing what your role is, chances are you're going to get through the day a lot easier than if you feel like you are just constantly reacting, because then you're going to react emotionally, and the emotional reactions are what end up causing you to either spin out of control into that little chaos. It really disengages you, and it impacts everyone around you.
Exactly.
So, I think these are great starting points for us, Edward. So I love it. And so far, just your talk about creating a structure and understanding your role is a perfect place to start for planning.
Yeah. And I totally think that, like you said, showing up in your role, that is very, very key. But in order for you to show up, there needs to be that clarity.
100% agree. I mean, that's one of the core things that I took away from one of my employers. And it requires understanding what your personal strengths are and how you can leverage your personal strengths to best impact the total goal, whatever that is, if it's for the day or for the month or for the season or for the year, for the location, for your personal team, for there's a lot of different elements that are in play when you work in store-based retail. Everybody plays Jenga, right? Like almost everybody in the world has played Jenga at some point.
One of my favorite games.
Yeah. And even sober Jenga is hard. So, let's be realistic. But everybody, you can take the easy top pieces, and this kind of goes back to that mentality of, oh, I'm just an hourly, so I'm not important. You guys are more important than you realize, because if you pull one of those bottom pieces out, everything falls. So, I think, really the structure piece is important, and it might not seem relevant right now because we're going into holiday. The most relevant part of this conversation is really knowing where your personal strengths are and what your role is, right, Edward?
Yep.
And where you fall in your location structure, so you can make sure that your little piece that you own does not fall into chaos.
Right.
Did I summarize you well?
Yeah, totally. No, totally. That's perfect. That's spot on. That's exactly how that works. That top. So we can move into the roadmap. So, and the roadmap, as I said earlier, when we discussed, I like to call it the 4 W's. So it's the what, the why, the who, and the when. So it's a very simple roadmap of how you're able to set up your structure for when it comes to your individual role, and what your role plays. But this is also a tool that when you are developing your team or you are on a team as an hourly, that you can use when you understand and your role is clarified to you and you have a good, clear understanding of your role.
Mhm.
This is the tool that you can use to keep you on track in that role.
I love it.
So when we talk about the what is basically your role. What is your job description? What is your role? Where do you fall? Where do you fall in this map? And then when you fall in this space, what is it that your role plays? Do you understand? It's the clear understanding. Do you understand what it is that you are doing? Okay.
Mhm.
The why, when you get into the why is why is it important? Why am I in this space? Why am I in this role? What are my expertise that I
Mhm.
offer in
Mhm.
this space?
Got it.
See where I'm going with this?
Mhm.
Okay. And then the who is you. You need to understand who you are and why you are important. And the who can also be who on your team
Mhm.
is important in their role to help you in your role. Make sense? And
Okay.
basically the win is basically, I like to use the win is it kind of goes back to the the growing in your space of where you are. So when do you know that you have filled that space and it's time to move on, or
Mhm.
when you have filled that space and this space feels good and this space is right and this is where I will stay because this is where my expertise is.
Got it.
Got it?
So you completely took me on a left turn when I was expecting to go right. But I love them because they have me thinking slightly differently.
Yeah.
Which is what we hope this content, this video or podcast or blog post, however you consume this information from us does, is that we just want you to get thinking a little bit differently. So I love the fact that you took me on a left turn. I don't have whiplash. But
I hope it was a good left turn.
it was.
Once you understand this in your role, you can totally use this same buildup for planning
Yeah, like
within
I
your
mean,
structure.
that's kind of what I initially thought. But I mean, I think if you were to apply this to yourself personally,
Yeah,
when
exactly.
you
And
walk
that's
in,
what I wanted.
the first, if anybody was to come up to you during the course of, or give you it, send you an email if you are a supervisor, or pick up your phone and say like, okay, I need you to go do this for me right now. Going through this structure, like personally, like, okay, so like, what am I good at? What is my role again? So what's my role?
Yep.
Why did that I get tapped on the shoulder?
Right.
Because that's my specialty. Got it. Okay. Who is it? Just me, or are there other people that I know with the same specialty
Yep.
around me that I can leverage to make sure that we can actually get this accomplished? And then when, like, okay, like I know I'm really good at this, and this is something that maybe I can expect to help out with going forward, as long, unless I'm ready to move forward and then
Right.
say, okay, like I really enjoyed doing that. But I think I might be ready for something else or something more. You can count on me for other things too. So I think
Exactly.
applying it personally before you go into that planning structure is
Yep.
smart. And
Exactly.
it's one of my fatal flaws. I tend to jump to the answer a lot of times. So
Well, and the thing
making
is
me
that
slow down is a good thing.
the thing is when I went into it, I wanted to talk about the planning, but you can't have the planning if you don't understand the structure.
Mm-hmm.
You can't plan successfully if you don't know the buildup of your structure or the team structure that you play on. And so the thing is that you need both. And so,
Yeah.
yes, you can. I knew when you saw the 4Ws,
Oh,
your
yeah.
mind was going to go straight into
Oh, yeah.
the planning part of it,
Well, that's the
which
store
is what I
director
love
in me.
about
Like,
you,
I can't
is that
get rid of that.
all
I'm
about the
sorry.
planning. But
I'm sorry.
but I also, which is key, which is don't be sorry. It's very important because I kind of wanted to take you on that left turn, as you said. I wanted you to see the you in the structure. And then take that you and what you learned on how to structure yourself in this organization, and then use that same analogy in your planning part within your structure.
Well, what I love about how you took me on that left turn is I think a lot of when we talk planning and structure and how we succeed, it's very easy for a supervisor or a director level, somebody who has other supervisors kind of reporting to them. And as you go up that chain of command, sometimes it is very easy to lose sight of what the individual roles are lower in the chain. And I think a lot of times what happens, there's a very catchy phrase about certain excrement using gravity to roll downhill, that when you find yourself in a role that is numerous, but along the base of that structure, sorry about that, base of that structure, it's very easy to dismiss a plan or a goal or something that is communicated from up above you as they just don't understand. And they might not fully understand, which this will be helpful to people in those large, those different roles, to understand from someone else's perspective, how they impact that perspective. But I think what's great about it is the fact that if you are in an hourly role and you get tapped, if you take yourself through those 4 W's, you're not going to react in a way that will be more emotional. You will actually see the logic about why you are part of this plan. And, have the, confidence and be empowered enough to ask those clarifying questions and really see how your role can impact the success of the goal or the location or the team. So that's why I like it. I mean, like, I initially thought about it from my previous role. But because I tried to make myself and I put myself in someone else's shoes, I was able to see how those 4 W's really can impact you in a positive way to help you survive when it's crazy. So if somebody does come to you and say, I need you to do this, you're not just going to say, fine.
You're not.
You're going to say, oh, there's a reason you're coming to me. There's a reason you're coming to me. Okay. Got it.
And a lot of those, I will tell you, a lot of that came from your story the previous week, our previous episode, where you talked about
the dress shirts
being well, not even just the dress shirts, the ambushing part. About someone, constantly coming to you and you constantly felt like you were being ambushed. But then when you took ownership of it, you sat down and you basically did the 4 W's. You know what? You figured out what it was that was frustrating you. You figured out who you were and what you wanted. and you figured out why you were frustrated, and then you figured out who you were and what you wanted to get out of those conversations. And you figured out the when you were going to be ready. You knew she was going to call you at any moment or any hap, but you knew when, and you knew when and how this was going to develop you to get to where you wanted to go. Yeah, that was a lot of my thought process behind it. But then also just a little story that I have, and it involves a leader that I worked for. And it was kind of the same way. It was, I will admit, it was a very high up leader. And this particular leader, she tapped me all the time for things
that were outside your
that
space.
were outside my space.
Ah, interesting.
But I took them on because I knew what I was in my space, and I was good in my space, and I knew I was good in my space. And I knew where my mind was going to the next level. No. And I didn't want to say no.
Got it.
Because I knew I was good, and I knew I was being tapped for a reason. And that reason was because I was good.
Yeah.
But it got heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier.
Yeah.
And then one day, as this was happening, the confidence was building up to me. And kind of like you, I sat down and got in my own space and talked to myself and reviewed the 4 W's. And then thought about what was going on and why I kept getting tapped on the back for these things. And then it became clear to me is that in order for me to develop myself and to understand what's going on, is that I need some clarity and I need to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So I went to that leader who actually was a leader above my direct report that saw something in me.
Yep.
And wanted to build me up and make me better. And I learned this when I went and asked about being tapped for all these things and being part of all these things. And that I feel like, I being picked on, because I have all these different roles that I play. Some of them are within my structure and my role, and some of them are above my structure and my role. And I don't know how much more I could take on. It was like, I don't know if I can do all this. And you know what her answer was to me?
What?
I wanted to see how long it would take you to come to me and say, it's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough. And it was interesting when I started to have the conversation, but you could tell that there was this moment of proudness.
Yeah.
Because I finally got it.
Yeah.
And she explained the reason why she did it. And the biggest reason that I took away from this is that she knew that I was there to play a bigger role in what I was doing for the company than in the current role I was in.
Yeah.
And the second part of that was that she did not want me to get bored.
Oh, yeah.
In the role that I was current in.
I think that's a big thing within the retail industry is like you see somebody get comfortable.
Yep.
And their potential. As a leader, sometimes you will challenge them in different ways in order to keep them engaged.
Yep.
And from the individual's side of things, it can often feel like I'm being taken advantage of, I'm being overworked, why can't they do this for somebody else? why aren't they spreading the work around? There, just a little side note to your story is that until you had that moment with yourself where you went and you said, I just need to understand why, because, I know I can do these things. I just don't understand why you're asking me to do these things.
Right.
Until you have that moment. There's a lot of assumptions that happen.
Yeah.
And those assumptions can kind of take you even down a negative path if you don't stand up and say, and have that conversation.
I was just about to say that, because it had gotten to the point that not only did it have my mind going, but my peers noticed it.
Yeah.
And even they were like, why do you keep taking this stuff on? Why do you keep letting them use you like this? Why are you letting them do this to you?
Yeah, I know. And I think those other voices,
those are the things that will take you down that negative approach. But for me, it was important that I understood why. I needed to understand why. And I will tell you, though, at one point I started to listen to those voices. Those voices started to get in. I want to say necessarily I took them, but I started to consider them, let's just say. But then that's what made me ask myself, but I want to know why. Like I need to know why, because I know how I'm built up. And I think that a lot of times we get caught up in the chatter, the noise, the background, and the background isn't necessarily part of your structure.
Yeah.
You need to understand what your structure is and why it's important to you. So that was my little story for today.
I think it's a great story. And I think it really does illustrate I hate to use this phrase. If you know, you'll learn this very quickly. If you don't know already, I'm all about catchphrases. But like the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's great things about working in retail. There are bad things about working in retail, and there are some ugly things about working in retail. And because we are expected to take in a lot of frustrations and whether it's from a customer or whether it's from results and we're disappointed with results, or whether it's a coworker, or whether it's stuff outside of work. And just as an individual, we have to kind of take in all of that. I don't want to say it's negativity, but take in all of that weight into our body. And without a really good structure, like what you've taken us through, Edward, today, that can become very, very heavy. Exactly. So I appreciate these two topics a lot, because understanding that structure and what role you play, and then those 4 W's is awesome. So I think anybody who's interested in just feeling a little more satisfied and feeling a little more structured in themselves, we'll find value in it. So great topics today, Edward.
Yeah, great. Glad you loved it. So as always, remember to subscribe, and share our videos, share our podcasts. And everything will be in the prescription box below. If you need any information on where to go. And like I said, remember, if you're down, while you're down there, click that notification. Carrie, you want to tell us a little bit about next week?
Oh, well, since next week's podcast and video get released literally days before Black Friday, I thought it was appropriate for us to have a quick discussion about how to keep our calm when stuff starts hitting the fan. Because I think being able to keep your sense of calm and take yourself through a couple of quick little habits is really, really important. And we're only going to go over three topics. We're going to talk about how to keep your calm in a customer situation, peer-to-peer, and peer to supervisor,
Oh,
or
great.
direct report to supervisor. So because those are the three kind of places that we get triggered the most.
Right, right.
All right.
Great. I'm excited.
All right, Edward, take us home.
So thanks for listening and thanks for learning. And we'll see you next week for our next episode of Stand Up Retail.
All right.
And till next time, remember, always walk with a purpose, no matter where you are or what you're doing. This is Edward and Carrie signing off for now. Bye.
Bye.